Hello, everyone. We are just waiting for some more people to arrive and to connect. So we will begin today's event in a kind of couple of minutes or so. Wonderful. We shall kick off. Uh, Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's event. The full title of which is this launch event for the 2024 Commonwealth Heads of Government Meeting Shadow Report, a review of country-level commitments to LGBTI communities since the last Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in 2022. A big welcome to those joining from all around the world, particularly our panelists also joining us from different corners of the Commonwealth. My name is Alex Farrow. I am the Chief Executive of Kaleidoscope Trust, a UK-based organisation working to advance LGBTI rights all across the Commonwealth. My pronouns are he, him, and I shall be as the kind of moderator today, leading us through the discussion that we're going to have over the next hour or so. So this is the first of 3 launch events that we have for our report that is launching today. Our online event bringing together our kind of global community, kind of LGBTI organizations, many friendly faces that we see in the on the attendee list today, but also an opportunity for organizations beyond our LGBTI community, those particularly interested in human rights, more broadly, also here today. We also then have another in-person launch event, as well as a in-person launch event at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting taking place towards the end of October in Samoa. So you are joining the first of a string of events where we will be talking about this report, sharing its findings, and really asking ourselves what needs to happen next over the next 2 years, given where we are, to really see progress for our communities and those that we are here to serve. I want to start by just saying that this report that we are launching today, obviously I'm here from Kaleidoscope Trust, but this report has been produced in partnership with the Commonwealth Equality Network, of which we at Kaleidoscope are a member and also act as the host for the brilliant secretariat team supporting almost 70 organizations from across the Commonwealth, kind of to advocate, to learn from each other, and to be more effective in the actions they're taking, particularly at a national level as well. We're also really thankful to have the support for this report from Global Affairs Canada for the production and supporting us with the ability to spend the time researching, writing, producing this report, and also to the UK's Foreign Commonwealth Development Office to support us to disseminate this report far and wide as well. Today, I encourage you, we've got a global audience for today's launch. Use the chat box, please, to introduce yourself, your name, pronouns, where in the world you are joining from, and perhaps a little bit about your organization. And I really encourage you to use the chat box as a way of connecting with others from around the world, and to kind of feel, I suppose, the global nature that is our movement, but also the work that we do. You'll see on the screen, I'm joined by three leading activists from across the Commonwealth. I'm joined now by Zukiso Tembe from the Eswatini Sexual and Gender Minorities organisation from Eswatini. Welcome, Zukiso. I'm joined by also Sheistah Bundoo-Deenoo from KDI, based in Mauritius, and Tebeio Tamton, the co-founder of BIMBA in Kiribati as well. Thank you for joining at all hours of the day and night for today's call. You being here is a crucial part of this report because this report serves to tell the stories of people around the Commonwealth working to advance rights and freedoms. And it's your stories that we are particularly interested to hear today. The value of today, linking to that, is very much about the discussion that we're going to have. We will be sharing the report in the chat box shortly, and you'll be able to read that. And we'll also be showing today a film which highlights the key messages from this year's report. But what we want to use today to do is to hold this discussion, to hear from leading activists across the Commonwealth. We know that you can digest the report at your leisure, but what we have today is a unique opportunity to hear the stories that go behind and into that report, which is where we'll focus most time today. Just a little bit of housekeeping. So today's session is being recorded. The main things being recorded are the speakers as well, and so that's what we'll see on the recording, but please do note that it is being recorded. If it is more accessible, we have enabled closed captions, which is essentially kind of subtitles, which on your menu bar, just at the bottom, there should be a function that says show captions. This will bring up a kind of text version of what is being said, if that is kind of more useful and more accessible for you to be able to enjoy today's call. We encourage people to use the chat box, as we have as well already. It's wonderful to see people joining from different parts of the world, from different parts of the UK, from Canada. Please do share in the chat box where you're joining from today. Please do comment and use that as a space to connect with each other, but also to respond a little bit to what we are talking about here and the panelists are sharing. But if you have some specific questions, there is a Q&A function on Zoom. If you just click the Q&A button down below, you'll be able to submit questions, which I will then use to ask our panelists a little bit more about. So if you have a question, use the Q&A function. Things might get a little lost, hopefully, if there's a great discussion happening in the chat box as well. We will try our best to avoid using too many acronyms and abbreviations. For those familiar with the Commonwealth world, it can be quite difficult to not fall into talking kind of with lots of letters and acronyms and things like that. We will try our best, but if there's something that you don't understand, an acronym that we've used, please just ask in the chat box, and either I or one of the team that's supporting this event from behind the scenes will jump in and try and explain a little bit about what we were talking about. Finally, we really encourage people to use the chat box, as I've said. We think this is a very safe and friendly audience, but just as a reminder that we will have a kind of zero tolerance approach if there are any kind of hateful comments posted or abusive language. We will simply remove people from this call. We don't think that's going to be necessary at all, but we do know this is a public event, and sometimes these things do happen. I think that's it for housekeeping. So finally, the agenda for today. We are going to talk very briefly about the summary report and the structure. Then we're going to show a film. Then I'm going to ask some of our panelists some questions and hear directly from them. And then I'm very much going to host an open discussion, either from questions that we have prepared or ideally questions coming directly from you in the audience as well. Then we will just have a final wrap up just before the end of the hour, just about next steps and where we all go from here. So today, we are launching this new report, which we're going to hear all about. I'm not going to talk about the findings in this bit, but I'm just going to tell you what is in that report to kind of as a teaser, so that as soon as we post the link in the chat box, you can spend the rest of your afternoon and evening or morning kind of digesting the report. What will you find in this year's report? Well, one of the things that is really important to just keep track of is an overview of the situation for LGBTI rights across the Commonwealth. Those numbers around criminalisation, it is useful for us simply to know the global situation. Many of us spend our whole professional world or our lives thinking about these numbers and the legislative situation for rights across the Commonwealth, but we know that that's not everyone's. And so it's an important part of the report is simply to document the current situation around rights when it comes to criminalisation or decriminalisation, the ability to change kind of gender identity for different parts of our kind of LGBTI community. Different laws will be affecting their freedoms, but also restricting some of the things that they would want to do in their lives. So there's an overview of that situation. A really important part of this report is to look at the commitments that have been made both on LGBTI rights, but also broadly on human rights at successive Commonwealth heads of government meetings over the past 6 to 8 years. And this is where we can see, we look at the communiques that have been, the leaders' communiques that are released kind of after every CHOGM, every Commonwealth heads of government meeting. And we can track there the progress that we're seeing. One day, we will see LGBTI communities reflected in that communique. We might feel a long way off, but one day we'll get there. But we have a section that talks a little bit about what is in the different communiques and the kind of commitments that have been made at a Commonwealth level. We then have a section on progress and setbacks that is a look at each individual kind of country in the Commonwealth in table forms, where you can see where have we made progress, or where has in terms of the legislation and the rights of LGBTI people in those Commonwealth countries, where has there been progress, but also where have we seen setbacks or rollbacks since 2022. And this is an important tracker, if you like, of both the kind of individual country level, but also gives us a sense of the kind of Commonwealth-wide picture and helps us understand the broader context to which we're working in. Finally, we have some key thematic areas around the intersections of both LGBTI rights, but also other kind of either rights issues or other areas that are going to affect the lives of our communities. And so in this year's report, there are particular sections on climate change, not least because it's a pressing challenge, but also because this year's Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting takes place in Samoa, countries in the Pacific on the front line of the kind of climate crisis and emergency, an important area of work that we give focus to. Secondly, on health and prevention, but then finally, the sustainable investments that are needed in LGBTI communities to help and ensure that people have economic rights and freedoms, but also the opportunities to reach their full potential as well. So that's what you can expect to find in this year's report. And I'm going to pause here, and we're going to show a short film which will tell us some of the findings in those sections that you can see in the full report. Anna, let's play the film. The state of LGBTI rights in the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth is an international organisation composed of 56 member countries spanning 6 continents. At the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, or CHOGM, heads of state meet to develop a shared policy agenda that addresses shared challenges and priorities. Over half of Commonwealth states criminalise same-sex relations. But despite increasing Commonwealth commitments to human rights, LGBTI communities still face severe challenges. same-sex relationships are legal in 26 out of 56 Commonwealth countries, but are punished with imprisonment, in some cases up to life in prison, and sometimes death in 18 out of 56 countries, while in 11 out of 56 cases, male homosexuality is criminalised. Equal marriage is illegal in 27 out of 56 countries. Gender recognition is not recognised in 42 out of 46 countries, and non-binary gender is not recognised in 47 out of 56 Commonwealth countries. Trans people cannot have their gender legally recognised in 3/4 of Commonwealth countries. Conversion therapy is not banned in 47 out of 56 Commonwealth countries. In spite of these challenges, some notable successes have been achieved since the last CHOGM. Notably, Caribbean countries such as Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, Dominica and St Kitts and Nevis, as well as Namibia, Mauritius and Singapore have decriminalised same-sex relationships. New Zealand recognised the right for gender self-identification without needing to go through family court or having to prove medical treatment. In Pakistan, transgender people are now allowed to receive identity documents with their preferred name and gender. However, challenges remain. For instance, Canada's introduction of the Parental Rights Bill in Saskatchewan, Alberta, and New Brunswick forces gender-diverse youth to be outed to their parents if they want to use their preferred name or pronouns at school. LGBTI people in Eswatini, Ghana, and Uganda have faced legal challenges, including the refusal to register rights groups, attempts to criminalise expression, and the passage of a law that introduces the death penalty for same-sex activity. St Vincent and the Grenadines upheld laws criminalising same-sex activity. Progress has been made, but significant obstacles remain. Sustainable funding and transformative change must be prioritised. A holistic and inclusive approach is essential to dismantle oppressive systems and ensure equality for LGBTI people. CHOGM 2024 provides an opportunity for Commonwealth leaders and institutions to make clear commitments to ending legal and social persecution of LGBTI people to ensure a common future where all are free, safe and equal. Great, thank you. As you can see, it is a challenging time. I don't need to talk more about that. We know it, we feel it, we see it. And what this report serves to do is to document where we think we are at this particular moment in time. Something that even as we were putting together this film and this report, the numbers themselves, even around criminalisation, were changing. And so meant numerous edits to the report as we were kind of going through it. I'm now going to launch straight into some discussion with our three incredible activists from across the Commonwealth. I'm going to briefly introduce them, and then I've got a specific question to ask each one of those. But I'm joined by Zukiso Tembe. Zukiso, I don't know if you want to kind of give us a wave. Zukiso from the Eswatini Sexual and Gender Minorities non-profit organisation focused on advancing the protection of human rights of LGBTI people in the Kingdom of Eswatini, particularly through lobbying and advocating for progressive and inclusive policies. I'm joined by Sheistah as well. Sheistah, hopefully you can still hear us. Give us a wave as well. Thank you. Sheistah is a consultant and member of KDI, a collective working together since 2018, advocating for the rights and protection of children, women, and LGBTIA plus people in the Republic of Mauritius. Thank you for joining us today. And finally, Tebeio. Tebeio there as well. Give us a wave as well, Tebeio. Tebeio is a fish inspector by profession and an LGBT advocate by passion. Tebeio is one of the kind of founders of BIMBA, which focuses on eradicating all forms of discrimination, stigma, and violence against LGBTI communities. All three leading organizations in countries, but also powerful advocates across the Commonwealth spaces as well. So let me ask some specific questions. Tebeio, I'm going to come to you first. As I talked about, climate change is one of the big things that we're talking about in this year's report. Kiribati is on the front lines of climate change. How have environmental challenges uniquely affected LGBTI individuals in Kiribati, particularly those in rural and coastal areas?
Thank you, Alex, and Melody, everyone, and hi. Yes, thank you for the question. Let me just start by saying that Kiribati has long-lying islands and coastal communities. Climate change to us means the loss of our ancestral lands, food and water insecurity, environmental degradation, and many others. And on top of that, our main concern about climate change back in Kiribati is sea level rise. And the idea that Kiribati being underwater in 30 to 50 years or so. So what's the use for us advocating for LGBTI rights in Kiribati when our children will not have a home in the near future? And for us as LGBT, in my experience, this is not very unique to members of BIMBA, as we still live in, most of us live in extended family units back home. But we are more concerned on major disasters that could happen, like cyclones and flooding and whatnot, that could force our transgender members, girls and women, to be put together in a room or in a space with boys or men. This is because there is no gender recognition for them back in Kiribati, and people have yet to learn about transgender people. I mean, in Kiribati, some cisgender girls and women are very homophobic and do not want to be with transgender girls and women. So for us, this is a concern in Kiribati and perhaps in some parts of the Pacific Islands. And I would also like to add that BIMBA is not very focused in climate change at the moment, but we are now slowly working on educating our members about climate change through training, workshops, and engaging with other stakeholders in Kiribati. And we can address some of the impacts as LGBTI individuals and communities as a community. However, we are fortunate to have prominent climate activists and organizations back in Kiribati from the public and private sectors and the Pacific who are dealing with this important work at national and regional and international levels. And I'm very sure that the leaders joining CHOGM in Samoa will learn so much more about this in the coming months, or in next month, or this coming week, sorry. Thank you so much, Alex. That's it from me.
Tebeio, thank you. Absolutely, I think CHOGM taking place in the Pacific is such an incredible opportunity for people to learn more about the not just the threat of climate change, but also the urgency. You have just reinforced that by saying that bigger point around Kiribati facing being underwater in 30 to 50 years brings this kind of, it is both existential for LGBTI communities, potentially in Kiribati, but also in that specific context of natural disasters and threats. There are very, very specific challenges that different parts of our community faces about not being separated into spaces that align with people's gender identity, for example. So really powerful intervention there. Thank you, Tebeio. Picking up on one of the other themes of our report, Sheistah, I'm going to come to you and then kind of tell us a little bit more in terms of the economic aspect of rights as well. So I know you are someone who has focused particularly on the economic impact of violence. What specific economic barriers exist for LGBTI individuals in Mauritius? And how does economic empowerment fit into this broader conversation about LGBTI rights?
Hi, everyone. So thank you for the opportunity. I hope you can hear me clearly. So in regards to the economic impact of violence, we first need to understand that economic empowerment in itself is not a side issue, but a central pillar of equality. When we're speaking about equality, when we're speaking about advocating for equal rights, economic empowerment cannot be considered as a side issue. In Mauritius, LGBT community, they face persistent economic barriers that are deeply intertwined with the discrimination and violence that they encounter not just in the professional setting, but also in the social space. We noticed that workplace discrimination is a major issue that many members of the LGBT community face. We can talk about harassment at work, which can take the form of comments, derogatory comments. But we also note, beyond the fact that there exists workplace harassment, ostracism which manifests itself like exclusion from important decisions, exclusion from important meetings, and all of these create the hostile working environment, which diminishes at the end of the day the productivity of LGBT employees. At the level of the KDI, specifically at the level of override unequal treatment Mauritius, which is part of the KDI, we are currently doing a research towards understanding the very trendy term of the very trendy concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion practices, which is happening in Mauritius in major companies which are developing their DEI strategies, which are focusing a lot on different forms of empowerment. And we are very keen to understand what are the perspectives of the LGBT employees when we talk about DEI practices in corporates, and to what extent are they included in these actions in DEIB, which is also part of sustainability, which is also part of the strategy of the company. So economic barriers, we have noted that there is a lot of them when it comes to the LGBT community. But the question that we ask ourselves, and that I ask myself too, is, are we really ready to tackle this? Do we see enough efforts from various directions, from various stakeholders? Not yet that much. In terms of data and research, there's very limited data on economic empowerment and economic balance faced by the LGBT community at the level of Mauritius. If we look at published articles, there are very few, if I can say just 3 of them that I've noticed recent articles on the LGBT community in regards to workplace discrimination. So we need more research, we need more data. We need to hear the voices of LGBT employees. And yes, I would persist to say that economic empowerment plays a crucial role in the broader conversation about the LGBTI rights, because financial independence can be a powerful tool for resilience and for advocacy. That's it for me. Thank you. I hope I answered your question.
Absolutely. No, I mean, there's so many things underneath that. Thank you. And I think it's just that not only kind of telling us kind of more about that economic lens, but I think a particularly important contribution from Mauritius, where, of course, recently decriminalized, and if you homosexuality and kind of consenting same-sex relationships between adults. If you haven't seen, to those in the listening in, if you haven't seen the film from the Human Dignity Trust, our colleagues there, talking about how the long case around decriminalisation finally succeeded, it is really worth taking a watch of that film. But a real reminder, I think, there from Sheistah, that of course that is both the fundamentals, a kind of a starting point. There are then so many other protections and rights and pieces of legislation that are required to protect then LGBTI communities, not least from things like workplace discrimination or harassment, but also then the kind of the more proactive things that are needed to ensure that LGBTI people can have the opportunity to lead fulfilling economic independent lives over the course of their lifetime as well. Really interesting also to hear you touch on the diversity, equity, and inclusion kind of things that are coming into place. I'm imagining also, particularly from kind of global organizations or kind of corporations as well, where we're seeing quite a big movement, I guess, in really all across the world. Thank you. We will come back to that, I'm sure, to some additional kind of questions for you there. Let's turn to Zukiso. Lovely to have you here, Zukiso. Eswatini Sexual and Gender Minorities works particularly to educate and sensitize communities around sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. What have been the most effective methods that you have seen in reducing stigma or changing attitudes towards LGBTI people in the Kingdom of Eswatini?
Hi, Alex. Thank you so much. I hope I'm audible enough. Yes. So, okay, for us in Eswatini, as we all know, we're still like a small landlocked country, which is probably one of the last monarchical, countries. And initially, the LGBTI community is non-existent, as the government claims, or it's illegal to be an LGBTI member of the community in the country, although the law isn't as active as it is, but we are criminalized under the Sodomy Act. So for us, for us as ESGM, we saw that there was a huge gap under LGBTI representation under law, human rights as well. There are so many, discriminations and human rights violations. So we do a lot of advocacy, which is social media advocacy and community-based advocacy. So community solidarity and the establishment of networks, collaboration with it builds strong community networks. We saw that it was the most effective for us. And this was what put us on the globe, or maybe on the top of the advocacy leaderboard, regionally and nationally. Now that we're here today speaking with you guys, we saw that for us, that's advocacy and activism, education and awareness programs. That's what helped us most to advocate, because a lot of our issues, what we discovered is the fact that these perceptions are driven by lack of knowledge of the LGBTI community, and their issues as well. That's what we are trying to combat, this type of gaps, by trying to integrate LGBTI issues into national programs by the actual activism, especially the community-based ones, where we go regionally to communities to educate, do focus groups, create safe spaces for LGBTI organizations, and also create safe spaces for LGBTI members, our members, because we're a membership-based organization. And we are a youth-led, I would say, and that we are community-based as well. So I would say basically that's what has helped us more, because it gave us a sense of belonging, among facing, different adversities the LGBT community faces in the country. And also it helped us with trying to combat the systematic social exclusion that is perpetrated by the government and other government entities, because our country is also governed through the Tinkundla system, which is also like the constitution, and then above there's the king and his regime laws and all that, which is the traditional and religion. So traditional religion and also Christianity. So sometimes it does counterattack each other, and on all that happening, the LGBT community is completely secluded and systematically secluded from all different sectors. And a lot more is the fact that they don't have a simple or maybe a clear understanding of sexual orientation and gender identity expression. So one of our main components that we do now that we have successfully penetrated the corporate, where we do the SOGI trainings, where we train into the economic sector to help improve, because we have LGBTI members who are in the workspace, but I think there's a study we did, I think 2 years ago, a socioeconomic study, and we discovered that a lot of our LGBTI members who are highly qualified don't get jobs because of their sexual orientation, and some of them are abused or violated within the workspace. Some of them end up quitting their jobs, some of them leave schools, some of them don't even get the chance to finish university or in primary school, basically. So that's what we're doing. Our number one driving force is this activism, advocacy and education on sexual orientation, gender identity expression. So yes, that's it for me, unless I left something else, but I think that's what I can say.
Zukiso, thank you. And some immediate parallels that you were sharing there towards the end, and particularly in the workplace, that Sheistah was also picking up, that the kind of the violence, the harassment, the discrimination that LGBTI individuals face in the workplace, even in different contexts, whether that is in countries where homosexuality or same-sex activity is decriminalized, or as is the case in Eswatini, where it still is illegal. I think we're all seeing this very clearly, even in places where perhaps there has been significant advances in rights and freedoms and protections for LGBTI communities. Some of the rollbacks that we're seeing at the moment actually is a reminder that we need to continue with this kind of community level work, no matter what rights and freedoms we have secured, because actually you never know when that rollback might happen. And you need to keep this kind of community education always there to make sure that you've got public support, particularly. Thank you. Building on that point, and here's where I'm just going to open it up to a general discussion amongst particularly the three of you. And so at this point, jump in with your kind of reflections straight away and build upon each other. But to broaden out the conversation, so in the face of rising anti-LGBTI sentiment that we are seeing in the Commonwealth, we are seeing that in countries across the world. We just look at whether it's West Africa, whether it's Eastern Europe, whether it's across places like the United States. We see that sentiment rising. How have the communities that you are working with built that resilience? And what strategies have you seen that are effective for sustaining morale across the movement? And that might be particularly picking up on your examples of working with communities, or it might be things that you're seeing effective in other places as well. Zukiso, it looked like you had some thoughts there. Jump into the discussion.
Okay, for us, what really helped us most is the community solidarity and support from different type of allies, stakeholders, and especially the human rights sector, the Human Rights Commission, human rights organizations that actually gave us more of a propelling projection towards the movement, because we came in as the aspect of the human rights, and when we're collective, it's way more effective when we are trying to talk to policy reforms and calling out different types of government entities into trying to prioritize LGBTI issues and integrating their programs. So for us, more on our support from the solidarity, community solidarity is, we also saw how effective it was when our case was in court, and we saw political parties coming together, LGBTI organizations coming together and rallying for us, because we, in a way, at some point didn't have a voice because the court had ordered us to shut down, and we also went kind of in hiding because of the political environment, which wasn't safe for us. And we're really a small office for us, so it really wasn't as much, and we weren't able to use our social media platforms for a while because the court had some type of communicate that it was wrong because we're not registered. And we saw how these different type of entities, which are our allies or members, regional and international, we saw how they continued to propel our campaign, which is the Register ESGM campaign, and it was really wonderful for us, and I think that's helped us way more, even with our litigation as well. We have international partners, which is the Southern Litigation Center in Johannesburg, South Africa. They've helped us a whole lot with in terms of tackling the different types of issues that need to be tackled, and the gaps that arise as we go, because at certain point for us we could come up as, or maybe tend to be narrow-minded because we're fighting for registration, because there's so many issues that are linked to to us being registered, and we are so tunnel visioned in the sense that we just want to focus on it alone, and then there are certain gaps that open, and there's certain things or issues that we tend to maybe oversee or maybe like underappreciate rather. Because our main focus now is to register. So for us, and the fact that we don't have much open doors as an LGBTI organization in the country, we can't really just request via email or what to sit down with the parliamentarian, for instance, but us having community solidarity, especially with human rights commissions, your legal aids, those entities which are, you know, closer to the government and our international and regional and the community itself, you know, activists, because we have trained activists in the country that advocate for themselves, which made so much noise to the point where we were able to even sit down with the Registrar of Companies and the Minister of Commerce and Industry and Trade, which was 2 years or 3 years ago wouldn't have happened. So for us, I think that actually put us on the map, as much as things are slowly progressing. But I think we've made so much progress when it came to our community solidarity. So I'd say that is what's been a sustainable or effective morale that has helped us as an organization, LGBTI grassroots, especially in Swaziland.
Thank you. Sheistah, I wanted to come to you because when there is a victory, it can be this enormous boost of morale, like a kind of decriminalization. But it can, of course, also come with, as we've seen in places like Namibia, it can also come with quite a backlash. Because suddenly an issue is then really at the forefront of people's attention or is in the media. Same question, really, Sheistah, but kind of what have you seen in Mauritius, and kind of how has the community there kind of held that resilience?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so basically we do have several NGOs working for the rights of the LGBT population, very specific type of work. And KDI being one of them is mostly focused on advocacy. To come to your question for the same-sex relations, the decriminalization, the news received much attention from the press. It was published in almost all the media articles, be it printed or online. And here in Mauritius, we have to recognize that we are a multi-ethnic and multi-religious society where people tend to have very pronounced opinion on different matters on social media, specifically Facebook. So with the communication that the media portrayed, and it definitely created a lot of different perspectives of people on social media, and we cannot disregard the fact that we still see, and this is also part of the recommendations that we are making, a lot of hate speech that happens, a lot of comments which are unnecessary. We also faced in the recent years people from the advocates from the LGBT NGOs facing death threats. So one of the recommendations that we have been continuously focusing on is also the inclusion of sexual orientation and gender identity in the Information Communication ICT Technology Act that we have in Mauritius. So there's multiple perspectives. What is actually missing, despite the fact that we have multiple perspectives in terms of comments from Facebook users, what we don't really see enough are actual opportunities where media houses open up to have a discussion on human rights, for example. These things would specifically happen on significant dates. And this is a part which is missing, which is actually not really working. But on the part of what we do as KDI, we would send recommendations. We would post out our recommendations on social media platforms. We would send them to the parliamentarians. We would recall, we would reshare to be able to have the message passed on again and again. And these strategies, I won't say have been proven 100% effective. We cannot say that these are the strategies that led to the change, but at least these are the strategies that we have used to be able to make our voices heard. as a collective, if that answers your question.
Thank you. I mean, that need for individuals to kind of, particularly when it comes to social media and the kind of the level of abuse that we I'm sure all see to different degrees, but we can see clearly the levels of abuse and hate that are on particular platforms at the moment. Both knowing how to protect ourselves, I think, is a key part of that as well as obviously the need to kind of try and find ways of removing that hate speech from those platforms. Tebeio, I want to come to you. Same question, and I guess in Kiribati, this resilience might mean quite a number of different things as a word. I suppose there's resilience in terms of what you were talking earlier around the resilience. We often talk about climate resilience and how resilient countries will need to be, but also the resilience of then kind of our kind of communities as well. How are people kind of sustaining that resilience in Kiribati? Oh, Tebeio, sorry, you're on mute. So just unmute and then.
Sorry, Alex, what was the question?
So the question is really around how communities build resilience. So when there's anti-LGBTI, rising anti-LGBTI sentiments around the world, how is the LGBTI community kind of staying strong, I suppose, keeping its sense of resilience in the face of such adversity?
Okay, all right, thank you. For me in Kiribati, it's almost the same as what has been mentioned around social media, because in Kiribati we also people have access to social media, especially Facebook, and you get all those all forms of homophobia, and especially strong opposition against marriage equality, and then you get death threats and all that. So for us in Kiribati, before we used to like just jump to the Facebook and just start, responding to all this negative stuff. But just recently, we find that some other people, like our families and our allies, are in the debating for us instead of us. So it's good to see that. Whenever I see like these negative comments, I'll just leave it as it is, and I'll just read all the, the allies in Kiribati like debating against the homophobic people on social media. And then there's another thing in BIMBA. We have a member who's like a public figure in Kiribati. She's a transgender, and then she has used TikTok as a platform to, like a sort of media, like comedy actually. But she's very open, like she's an open BIMBA member. So I think a lot of the people's understanding goes through. I mean, when they start seeing her doing all this comedy stuff and like awareness on BIMBA and other important issues in Kiribati, that's another way of building morale for our members in Kiribati. They look up to this public figure on TikTok. So yeah, thank you.
Really lovely to have the other side of it, the ability of things like social media actually to create a sense of connection and community and role models, particularly for generations that have grown up without those role models. I want to come to the two questions in the chat box in the Q&A. Oh, Zukiso, one directly for you, which was when you mentioned in one of your answers about developing a module for sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression training with corporates. Did you develop that yourselves, or did you use resources from other places?
Okay, for the survey, I think we didn't develop it ourselves, but we did use resources. Or the only thing we used, I think, the general SOGI module, but we changed it a bit into our context for better understanding and for our different demographics that we actually attend to. For us especially, we are trying also, hopefully we'll have one in Siswati language where we can actually even go to communities and use it. But no, not any specifications.
Thank you, Zukiso. And of course, if you have any materials that you would happy to share, then of course we can disseminate that to people listening in afterwards as well. A second question, which I think would also be really interesting to hear, particularly Tebeio and Zukiso response as well. Sheistah, feel free to answer this as well. But a question around, so the question is, will there be a protest in CHOGM, at CHOGM in Samoa for LGBT rights, particularly for or kind of protesting against the fact that in so many countries we're still treated as criminals, is the line in the question. Which I think, I know some of you may be in CHOGM, so there's a question there around CHOGM itself, but I wonder also just to broaden it slightly, what is the role of protest, particularly in countries where the law is still criminalizing homosexuality? And what are the strategies that you are seeing as effective in that, where it may be unsafe to protest directly against those laws? Any reflections, I mean, particularly from Tebeio or Zukiso, both countries that still kind of have criminalization of homosexuality as the law?
Thanks, Alex. Oh, I'll just answer first, if that's okay. So I cannot speak for the Samoan people, and especially our LGBT community there, but I know that we have a Samoa Fa'afafine Association there, which is very prominent, very recognized in Samoa, because they have this traditional culture about third gender or Fa'afafine. They call it Fa'afafine. So I don't think there's going to be some sort of protest. Especially when there's also a team from TSEN, the Pacific Regional TSEN, that is, there's a task force that's working on that, like ensuring that the communities are engaged and sensitized. And yeah, I wouldn't think there's going to be protests, especially when Samoa has this rich culture of Fa'afafine, respecting transgender girls and women. I hope that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Tebeio. And you're right, there will be a large delegation from the Commonwealth Equality Network. So if you are not following TSEN, the Commonwealth Equality Network, on social media or sign up to the newsletter, I would recommend joining and kind of looking at the Insta and Twitter and the newsletter for all the main updates on what the delegation are up to and the actions they are taking in Samoa around the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. Zukiso, Sheistah, anything to add on those questions?
All right, for us, protesting, it's a bit tricky for us, and it's a very uncharted territory, because after the June 29, 2021, and we did have like a political protest that was really, really huge in the country, but unfortunately we lost a lot of young people who were fighting for their rights. For us, it's something that we really aren't keen on, but we will continue doing advocacy on a larger scale internationally, on social media or in communities, and also hopefully with the help of our allies and all that. But we do like big gestures, like billboards and advertisements, documentaries. For us, it could be seen as a form of protest, but not like on the street, because that's really, really dangerous with our armed forces who are not afraid to put people down on that sector. And because the LGBTI community are already in a minority group, and we feel like it wouldn't be fair for us to ask that minority to go to the street to endanger their lives and all that. So yes.
Thank you, Zukiso. I'm going to move us on to our final question. We've just got a few minutes left, and so I'm going to ask each of our panelists for a kind of minute response to this final question. So given the conversations we've had today, what are the most urgent reforms or actions that Commonwealth governments need to take in the next 2 years as we get to the next Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting to ensure that there's progress on LGBTI rights? And Sheistah, I'm going to come to you first, if that is okay, to not put you too much on the spot, and then I'll go round, so we'll ask Zukiso and then finally Tebeio. Sheistah.
Yeah, so we definitely have made some commendable strides when we look at the legal perspective, but our advocacy remains, and we still need to review our legal framework. So we still need collaboration, and this is our advocacy. We need collaboration. We need to see the long-awaited gender equality bill, which has been asked to the member states of Mauritius, from the CEDAW to the UPR and all the international agreements calling for having a gender equality bill, which should be non-binary. We are continuously fighting for this. We've given recommendations on how we wish it to be. We are looking forward to more collaboration. We are looking forward to actually have consultative workshops with the member states to be able to discuss our opinions and to be able to have an agreement around the concept. Not just the concept, but the very definition of gender, because across different legal documents that we have in Mauritius, the definitions of gender are different and not very, very clear. So we are hoping to continue to advocate. Definitely, advocacy comes with the need for financial resources, especially at the level of TDI, given that we are a collective of different NGOs, consultants, independent workers. One of our team members, Melanie, is also on this call. So we really need to continuously advocate, and this is our fight, and this is the support that we ask for to be able to continue to fight, not just for LGBTI rights, but also for human rights as a whole.
Sheistah, thank you so much, and appreciate the brief remarks there. Thank you. Zukiso.
Yes, thank you, Alex. So for my submission, what I could say for us is that to understanding, I think prioritizing understanding our local context, and with that also that could actually help with capacity building to empower the local organizations who can be then in return be empowered in advocacy, and then be able to go to sensitize or talk or have conversations with law bearers and policymakers. Also the monitoring of human rights violations, which is like the huge issue around globally, I would say, but for us especially as we're still not legalized as same-sex marriages, and also a bit of enshrinement in the long-term commitment for us that would actually help us with being able to walk through, or being able to actually be empowered enough to promote inclusive policies, and to be able to thrive through the movement, even for the younger generation that are coming, and actually also recruit different types of people who are in different types of governmental sectors to being champions and allies for the LGBT community, and providing here and there a little bit of resource, or human resource or financial resources, in able to drive some of these campaigns or some of these mandates that we are trying to help or try to push to help the LGBTI community. And also what more emphasis on is the advocacy at international forums, that please include us in this international forum, so we can be able to voice out our issues. It could we could find that we are going through the same issues, and maybe we can also learn a thing or two from different types of countries that have actually gone through and went through what we went through, and they have actually succeeded, just like Mauritius, that they've just been decriminalized. Maybe we can try some of the tactics that they used, probably maybe in a year or two, we would also have that certain victory, so basically that's it from us.
Thank you, Zukiso. And finally, Tebeio.
Thank you, Alex. Okay, I'll just quickly mention this. So for Kiribati, or maybe the some parts of the Pacific, it's going to be law reforms, legal reforms for sure, and then not just decriminalizing homosexuality, but actually looking at policies, legal protection, and then policies of monitoring that for human rights violation against LGBT. And for us, one of our targets now is to engage with lawmakers or parliamentarians. Yesterday, I'm happy to inform you that for the first time, there's a mention of LGBTQ or BIMBA in the upcoming government's manifesto. That for us is quite a success because we're planning on sitting down with lawmakers or parliamentarians in December, thanks to the funding from Kaleidoscope Trust, which will allow us to talk with them about their ideas on how we can how they can assist with legal reform or their concerns and all that. So yes, I mean for us, it's definitely going to be law reforms or decriminalization. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tebeio. I almost felt like you were speaking twice as fast at that point to make sure that you could get everything in. And thank you. I think it's now 1 a.m. in the morning in Kiribati. So thank you for joining us so late.
Thank you. No problem.
We will. What a fascinating discussion, and also a reminder of both how we make change happen, but also the urgency of some of the things that we face. Thank you to our three panelists, Zukiso, Sheistah, and Tebeio. Enormous gratitude to you for today's call, but admiration for the work that you and your organizations are doing. I want to just thank briefly my team at Kaleidoscope, particularly those who have been authoring this report, leading on it, really went above and beyond to produce this report, and it's really acknowledged and with enormous gratitude as well. And those behind the scenes also making today possible. Thank you once again to Global Affairs Canada and the UK Foreign Commonwealth Development Office for your support. We can't do this kind of movement building, but we can't do this activism without countries like you providing support and funding, and it is never more needed than it is today. We will be sharing links to the report and some of the things that we have talked about in today's call as well with you all after today to those attending. And if you are at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Samoa or at ILGA World coming up in South Africa, please do get in touch with us. A number of our teams will be in those two places, and we would love to meet you there as well. So thank you very much for today. Enjoy the rest of your morning, day, or night. Thank you once again, and look forward to seeing you all again soon. Goodbye, everyone.